as a liaison between the USDOL Registered Apprenticeship Partners information, with USDOL. But then we also provide technical assistance with the USDOL Registered Apprenticeship Partners data system. Really new and upcoming, I think we're just beginning one of those very soon, is the pre-apprenticeship area. These are usually secondary, high school, work-based learning programs that are connected to a USDOL registered apprenticeship via an articulation agreement. The pre-apprenticeship will articulate into a registered apprenticeship, and students in those pre-apprenticeships must receive a benefit from the registered apprenticeship for participating in that pre-apprenticeship period. So it's building a pathway into that. Part of the significant work that we are discussing currently are the changes in the Indiana high school diplomas. I'm sure you are all familiar with that. Some students in that curriculum will need work-based learning opportunities as a part of their diploma program. And we think that we are well aware, I should say, that this may present some difficulty for employers in developing those. But we want to be right on the spot with that to help. Indiana's top job rankings shows that something is needed after high school. Indiana Career Apprenticeship Pathways state that by 2031, 72% of U.S. jobs will require education beyond high school. Only 39% of Indiana adults aged 25 or older have an associate degree or higher. So what Indiana needs is more education and training options. In this space, there have been 4 priorities that have been identified. Number 1 is to create an industry talent association to convene employers in construction, healthcare, IT, and manufacturing. And there's a need for regional intermediaries to work with communities for implementation of these, for short, ITAs. Number 2 is to create some structure mechanisms for upskilling, for enabling learners to move up or across pathways. The third one is labor market aligned career advising systems starting in middle school, and to define clear roles and responsibilities then for all stakeholders, employers, educators, and nonprofit organizations and government. SWIN Workforce has the complexity as the workforce ecosystem convener to connect industry and education. We have applied to be a regional intermediary for 8 counties to implement the apprenticeship pathways. Of course, initial work will include identifying those pathways that are available and then working with the industry talent associations to build those pathways. And a large task to accomplish in this work is getting the word out to engage students and parents, of course. We're going to need help from the community, partners, and organizations. The last part, I'd like to shift focus just a little bit and tell you some general information about the current workforce. There's a lot of information on your tabletop. You'll see information on your tabletop called At a Glance. These are some demographics that you can browse. There are some business services brochures. The At a Glance information gives you an overview of the customer demographics, and of course the business brochure describes the business services. A couple of just comments that have been made per reports that we receive. The most frequent job openings at the time are in healthcare, manufacturing, logistics, transportation, and warehousing. That's all one, those 3. And that probably comes as no surprise to those who are sitting in the office. I will say that in a conversation, speaking to work preferences in the school space. In a recent survey from a middle school in the area, it was an 8th grade survey, students stated their preference for construction, manufacturing, and engineering. Missing from the list for the very first time was healthcare. This came as a big surprise to us. There's other information on your table. There's a grid for your information that displays the cost of childcare, which is a significant barrier to employment. It is listed by county with a regional average of $3.74 an hour for childcare. On that grid, it's broken down by infant, toddler, preschool, pre-K, school age for the full day, and then school age aftercare. Also, barriers to employment, we have some information. We have asked some of our employment specialists, and we find that while some workers really thrive on flexibility in scheduling, others want a set schedule of work so that they can plan for that child care. A week-to-week type of schedule also complicates matters like healthcare appointments, child school conferences, and those types of meetings. So you find it varies what the employer is looking for. I should say the employee. You can really tell I'm on the wrong side of this conversation. Good. All right. Work-life balance. Workers with families want to spend time with their families. That's not all of them, but a significant amount of them. They would rather do that than actually consume more goods. Example, that might be a parent who does not want to work 6 or 7 days a week. There are some unrealistic expectations out there, and this is kind of the last point that I'd like to make. Burnout is caused by constant everyday change. It leads to increased quit rates and a smaller number of available workers. Employers are telling us some things about their recent employees. There's a feeling of entitlement. 61% of employers say that college graduates cannot handle the workload. 63% of employers say that workers are late to work. 59% say that workers often miss deadlines and assignments. And 53% say that workers are frequently late to meetings. So I've spoken to you a whole lot about what the workforce looks like, tried to speak more to the employer side than I am usually doing, but also a little bit here at the end of what we hear in our offices when someone comes in who is looking for work. Yeah.
All right. Hi, everyone. As stated earlier, I'm Michelle Schaefer. I'm with Vocational Rehabilitation. Hope you guys can hear me. Okay. Sorry, it's loud up here. But vocational rehabilitation, we are a state government agency. There's vocational rehabilitation all across the nation. And our intent is vocational means work, is to help individuals achieve an employment outcome or maintain an employment outcome. What makes us different than more of the Work One system side of things is the individuals that come through our agency are individuals who identify as having some type of disability. And these are not anything acute, it's something permanent that would give someone a challenge or a barrier in a work type setting. Those can be visible and invisible disabilities. You'd be surprised how many invisible disabilities that are out there that probably you or your employees or people that are around you have that you are not aware of, but they have some type of barrier or challenge. And what we do is these individuals come to us and they are either at risk of losing or keeping their job because of their disability, or maybe they've acquired a new disability or healthcare situation, or their health has declined. So maybe they couldn't do the work they were doing to the extent they were doing it, or maybe they can, but they need some type of accommodation or support to help them maintain that work. And then we have people coming to us that are seeking employment because they think, you know, I have these challenges, I want to do this type of work, but I don't know if I can do it with my abilities and these barriers I have. And we work with the individuals to help them accommodate that disability so they could do and perform a type of work just like somebody who able-bodied or who doesn't have that health condition does. Our services, we do not, you know, anyone can come to our agency. Anyone can refer someone to our agency. So a lot of times we might get a referral from an employer. You know, they have an individual who just had a car accident, or they had a stroke, or they're coming back from being off for chemotherapy, or whatever it is, and now maybe they're struggling on the job, or they can't do what they could previously do, or they want to give them a promotion, but they're like, I don't know if we can make this work because of their challenges. So maybe the individual or the employer refers them to us. And we help that individual, whether we do worksite accommodations, assistive technology, on-the-job supports. There's so many things out there that are just pretty much unbelievable that can accommodate someone with an invisible or visible disability. But then the individuals that are coming to us that are seeking employment, they're just an untapped applicant pool. I try not to, you know, pull too many stats or numbers, but those that identify as having a disability who are between the ages of 16 to 64, only 38% are employed, compared to 74.5% of the general population. So I know there's a lot of, you know, sometimes there might be fear from an employer's standpoint about how can this person who's coming in here blind do this, or you know, how much is this going to cost me, or how much extra time is this going to take to help this individual? Talk to the, you know, anytime someone comes in for an interview, you know, just let them talk about how they can do that job that they're applying for. Or if somebody does come in, you know, and you're like, I don't think I have anything for this person, you would be surprised about what we assume is someone's inabilities compared to what their abilities are. And then how our agency can come in and supplement and support them to getting what they need to be able to do that work compared to somebody, you know, who doesn't have that disability. Like I said, anyone can refer to our agency. Our services are free to those individuals that come to us. But our goal is employment and achieving that employment outcome, and not just, you know, some first job that comes open. What are their goals? And sometimes people come to us and their goals require further training, whether it's getting into a trade or vocational school, or even a four-year degree or a higher education degree. We support them and accommodate their disabilities along the way to help them get to that end result. We have people that come to us that have a lot of barriers, so it's not just their disability. They have socioeconomic barriers. They could have a low education. They could have a criminal history. We have doctors and lawyers that come to us that need our support because something about their health is giving them a challenge in that work setting, and we help accommodate them. So I didn't want to, I could talk about this for hours. I was trying to give a high level, and I can see myself getting into the weeds. But we have physical offices in, I think, I just heard this yesterday, so it's around 19 or 20 locations throughout the state of Indiana. But we have, even if we don't have a physical office, we have staff assigned to serve every county in Indiana. So we come to you, we come to the people to meet the individuals in their county of residence. And we have a lot of partner agencies that give us space and that we work with. We could be collaborating with staff within the Work One system on what can they do and what can we do to help this individual. But then we also are connected to almost every single public and private high school within Indiana. There's a handful that won't work with us, but pretty much almost all of them. So we are identifying these youth with an identified disability to help them transition from high school to work, high school to further training to work, or college, or whatever it is, so they don't fall through the cracks. And we're making sure, you know, we're educating and supporting these individuals on really, you know, not a pie-in-the-sky job. You know, this is what the local economy, you know, do you want to stay in Indiana? Do you want to work in Indiana? Okay, let's see what the job market is and labor market is and really help tailor to achieving those goals. So they don't end up like we're working with someone and they go to college to be an oceanographer and want to live in Vincennes, and then so we support them and there's no job, you know. So that, but we do a lot of what we call vocational guidance and counseling. So our team members are those really the experts in, you know, understanding the workforce, but then understanding disability and how to get there. So I think I'll stop here. I'm sure there may be some further questions, but don't want to take up too much time. And
so again, my name is Nash Dunn. I'm president at KCARC, and I'm going to talk, Miss Amy and I are going to talk a little bit about how KCARC operationalizes some of these ideas to hopefully help demystify some of this for you all. So Ms. Michelle brought up some wonderful facts, and you know, I don't know that anybody here well, most employers in this county and really all over the country are looking for employees all the time, right? Based on the statistics that are out there, the number of people with disabilities in our community across Indiana and the unemployment rate, what that means for Knox County is that we have roughly 3,000 people who are currently unemployed who have some sort of disability in Knox County that could work. That represents an untapped resource that we have right here in Knox County. I want to make sure that everybody understands me whenever I say these people are a very real resource. It's not lost on me that many people probably just assume, well, you know, KCRC is a service provider for people with disabilities, so of course they employ people with disabilities there and work to support them. However, you know, one of the things that many people don't understand about KCRC, while we have roughly 350 employees, about 40% of our workforce works in our manufacturing areas. We do manufacturing to help generate revenues to support our mission. So that means we have a substantial amount of people that are working for us with disabilities. Right now in our manufacturing areas, we are running at about 80% direct labor rate. So that means about 80% of our workforce in our manufacturing facilities has some sort of documented disability. So all that to say, if we can do it, I promise you that you can do it as well. One of the things that KCARC can do to help other employers, okay, is we act as a service provider in this space that these fine ladies here were explaining to you all. And so, again, while many employers might kind of sit back and say, you know, oh, well, that all sounds great, but I'm not really sure what that means for me. How am I, you know, if nothing else, I certainly don't have a staff that's waiting for me to bring somebody in who needs extra help and they just have all that extra time. I believe most people in the workforce have a little more than 40 hours worth of work a week. So KCARC is able to come in and as people go through the vocational rehabilitation system to say, hey, I need supports finding and maintaining a successful job, they can select a service provider like KCARC. And I should be very clear, there are, of course, other service providers within this community and all around the state of Indiana that can come and support those folks. When they choose somebody like KCARC, we have a book of about 40 to 50 businesses that we work with that we know here in Knox County are willing to hire people with all sorts of diverse abilities. And so when somebody comes to us and they say, hey, I'm looking for a job, that can start with, I mean, you know, some people aren't sure what they want to do for the rest of their life, not sure what that first step is going to be for them. Some people have very specific ideas. And so then we're able to work with those individuals to, whether it's explore different employment opportunities and see what might best work for them, or just go right after the goal that they have. We're able to reach out to these employers, say, hey, you know, we see that you're hiring for this, we think we might have a good candidate for this, and we start working with them at that point to support them all the way through the process. That can, again, some people even need help just going through the application process and making sure that theirs is going to be one that's going to catch somebody's eye, and we can support them in that manner all the way to, once they land the job, we can be there on site as much as necessary in the beginning there to help make sure that that person's going to be in a winning scenario. So there are some employers in town that have taken advantage of the services that KCRC provides here in a, I mean, very wholehearted manner, and they've done things like work with our, we have a division called Dove Employment Services, and they've worked with some of our employees there to even put them through their own train the trainer series. So like McDonald's is a great example of that. We had an employment specialist a few years ago. We continued to place people there, and they finally said, hey, look, it would make a whole lot more sense if you were a certified trainer for McDonald's. So they took the time to put her through that, and now all of a sudden we have a real resource that costs McDonald's absolutely nothing. The KCRC is providing to that individual, the services that the employer is receiving, whether that's directly through Voc Rehab or ancillarily through having a group like KCRC come in and support, that doesn't cost anything to local employers whatsoever. Frankly, it's coming out of our tax dollars, so consider it prepaid. Okay, it's also important, okay, to remember understanding, I'm going to say, what most people think about whenever they think about KCRC. We're not just talking about people with intellectual and physical disabilities. Of course, there's a large percentage of that population that needs to be gainfully employed as well and has the ability to be. However, as they mentioned, VR actually just moved out of what they call order of selection. And so now what's happening is people with much lower needs, so people who are not so high needs in the disability range of things, they're able to now get employment supports through the state. And they come with different skill sets. That's people with mental health issues, people with addictions recovery issues. And so, again, part of what we want to do today is help kind of demystify the stigma that comes along with employing people with disabilities. Again, I'll just remind you that 80% of our workforce in manufacturing, and I should also state, we're a prime contractor for the United States government. It's not like we're sitting there making widgets or bucket handles or something like that that don't take any real quality. 95% of the items that we're pumping out of 6th Street right now go right back to the United States military, and if you know anything about the United States government, their standards are very high. Again, I'll say, if we can do it, I know that every other employer in the county can make that happen as well with supports like KCRC is able to provide. So Miss Amy's going to talk a little bit about how we do things at KCRC and how we support our employees rather than just the service offerings that we have.
Sure. So like everybody's point here, and really what we do is we take a personal approach and we really meet people where they are. And I've been with KCRC for about 20 years, so I've seen the shift. We've had to shift because we had to get people in the door, right, so that we can make these products for the military. And so we have gone through this journey with, let's say, addictions recovery. And so we started, working with the LAM program back in, let's say, 05 or 07. And so we have really grown like partnerships in the community. And, that's another group of people that want to work, and are ready to work. They just need that second chance. And so that's something that KCRC offers people, whatever it is. I mean, we're willing to give you a second chance. And just because you made a bad decision, good people make bad decisions, right? It happens every single day. So I feel like that's something that is embedded in our culture. And I think that we do really treat people with respect regardless. And so the addictions recovery, I think we've really grown in that area. I mean, we've built great partnerships with drug boards, family recovery boards, with the other addictions recovery groups out there. I think you just have to look at all the different opportunities that are there and build those partnerships, build those resources. I mean, even if it's with the schools and it's looking at the internships and the apprenticeships. I mean, we're doing things that we didn't do 5 years ago that we're looking at doing now. So we're adapting to meet the needs,
there's just a reality too, when you pour into somebody's cup, right, their cup will eventually begin to overflow. And if you're the employer that's pouring into those people's cups, you're the one who's gonna reap the benefits of that. That's very real. In our manufacturing areas, right now, I don't know the percentage, I'm gonna guess it's somewhere around 80% of our supervisory and management personnel in our manufacturing areas came out of addictions recovery programs, okay? They stuck with us and stick with us because they have a why every day. And they're not service providers. They're not working in our residential areas. They're not working in preschool or anything like that that's going to naturally fill up their cup. They work in a manufacturing environment that is incredibly supportive. And so just by being able to be there, seeing the fruits of being a very supportive employer and a supportive peer in that working environment, everybody starts winning. And you know, often when people are a part of those scenarios, they want to continue to be a part of that scenario. Better than that, they want to try to help make some of those scenarios happen. And really, I mean, I think it really just comes back to meeting people where they are. I mean, to Amy's point, a couple years ago, we undertook a project to raise the wages back in our manufacturing environment. And one of the conversations that had always occurred at KCRC was, if we're going to do that, there are going to be people who lose their jobs because their productivity levels are simply so low that we're not going to be able to afford to pay them. When we decided that we were going to make this move, we totally changed the conversation internally. And we just said, here's the deal. We're not going to say that anymore. We're not going to have the idea that anybody's going to lose their job. In fact, what we're going to say is, ain't nobody losing their job here at KCRC. Everybody will increase their productivity percentage, and their wages will increase as necessary when those go up. I can proudly say that we didn't have anybody, even our most severely disabled people, lose their jobs through that process. It took a lot of pivoting and things like that. And frankly, at one point, and it kind of just started with me saying, you have to hit this productivity percentage or you're not going to have a job anymore. Just setting basic expectations, all of a sudden people started rising to the occasion. About 3 or 4 months into that, the productivity levels started to drop again. We had the conversation, what do we think is happening? Somebody said, I think that they're bored. Well, I don't know about you guys, but if I was sitting there doing the exact same thing all day long in a manufacturing environment, I would not be very happy either. That does not speak to who I am. And so then we had the conversation, hey, let's start cross-training them. They need to start doing different jobs. Well, that's not the standard process in manufacturing. That certainly was a little outside of the norm. However, when we did that, when we started cross-training people and allowing them to work in different roles throughout the day or throughout the week, their productivity levels just continued to rise at that point because they were engaged. And so again, it really does take thinking outside of the box like that and having those conversations and being willing to make the investments. And again, these are not cost-prohibitive investments whatsoever. It's more time than anything, just taking the time with each one of your employees to meet them where they are and try to help ensure that they're a successful employee so that you as the employer can reap the benefits of that employee. I think that's what we got.
Okay, so before I jump in with a bunch of questions, does anybody have any questions yet? Yes, Laura Bogart. And do I need to take it back to them? I can talk about it. Okay. I can talk about it. This is vocational rehab. Do you guys offer a service to the employer? They're bringing the mic back to you, Laura. Sorry. Just so we can record it.
I mean, the individual has to come and apply to vocational rehabilitation. So even if they're already employed or whatever, they need to come apply. And then we will do assessments. If it's a work-based, assessment, assistive technology, a combination of both, or whatever it is, we'll go out to the job site, do an assessment, and then get recommendations of what is needed to help accommodate whatever barrier or challenge they're having. So there's a lot of software out there that like voice to text, text to voice, that can help if somebody, especially say somebody has a stroke, so they can no longer type, anymore because they don't have use of this side. They can talk to their computer and type out everything, or maybe they have sudden vision loss. their stuff that can help them, and then we can help train them on how to use this too. So it's not just, here's this thing to help you do your job. You know, we will do those training supports to help get them comfortable with whatever it is. Was there a specific service that you had in mind? Yeah, they would still have to apply for our agency because our services are directly to the individual. However, you can talk to them, you can send in the referral, whatever it is. And usually whenever we do get a referral for someone who is employed, we don't prioritize it, we try to fast track them. Because we know, okay, they have a job, but there's something going on that they need right now to help them sustain that. So we will do whatever we can to act as quickly as we can to meet that need. But they do have to apply.
Laura, to your question, I just want to be sure to say any employer in Knox County, any person in Knox County can pick up the phone and call KCRC absolutely anytime if they have questions about these things. We have a team of resources there that could help employers, let's say, one, better understand if that employee is unsure of how to go about engaging in vocational rehabilitation services or something like that. We are more than happy to help walk them through that. We have a position called the Navigator that just exists to help people like that. It doesn't cost anybody anything, not even the state. We do that with the funds that we generate through manufacturing. So if any employer in Knox County is facing an issue like that and struggling to understand how to better support this employee, please do not hesitate. Pick up that phone, call 812-886-4312. We will be glad to support the employer and be blessed to support that employee. Yep.
Are there funding opportunities or options out there for employers to help with accommodations for certain disabilities? And I like how Nash says diverse abilities, not disabilities, diverse abilities.
I can't say that I know off the top of my head specific things for employers, but a website I do like to refer people to, and this helps anyone at any time. The acronym is JAN, it's Job Accommodation Network, and it's targeted towards employers as well as individuals with disabilities on really understanding the types of resources and accommodations out there. So I think if you would go to that website, and it's a nationwide website, but, that could help give you some ideas, and I think if you can hone in on more specific to your geographical area too. So I don't want to speak too much to it. I'm in management now, so I don't do a lot of field work, so I'm a little rusty with doing some of that hands-on stuff, and but I would go that route.
Again, it's important to understand if that specific employee can get signed up through vocational rehabilitation and be approved for those services, no, the funds might not come directly to KCRC or as the employer or whatever, but they will receive funding to help support those accommodations, okay? So when those costs come up, that's when VR can support that individual, not the employer, but the individual in receiving those types of accommodations. So they can essentially help shoulder some of those costs, but it has to be very individual specific. Yeah, of course, of course.
Any other questions? Yes.
Definitely. We have a system of what are called mandated partners within our system, and vocational rehabilitation is one of those. Each MOU cycle, we co-sign that MOU, which describes who provides what types of services. We have a partner referral system. It is a digital system, and I looked at last month's stats. VR is our largest partner with which we share these referrals. In past times, we have actually had a VR navigator in the Work One office in Evansville, but one that also traveled all over the region. So it is, VR is one of our most closely aligned partners. Sometimes there are services that we can provide that aren't on the top of the list for VR. Certainly we are not the ones for accommodations, but both partners have to be well versed in what the other does so that our employment specialists and their staff know how to co-enroll and put that person in the workplace where they need to be.
So when it comes to supporting the employee, what could we do from a business standpoint to help them? I mean, from a business, how can we as a small business owner get ready to accommodate for our new hire? Are there certain areas, I guess my question, so many thoughts in my head. Where can we go? Is there a Lisa Jan website? Is there anything else locally that we go to? I know we didn't reach out to KCRC, but is there someone in the Work One office or locally that we can reach out to maybe help evaluate our space to help accommodate these new hires?
Like was mentioned, and I think Nash explained that, like we can't, like with vocational rehabilitation, we can't just pay for services directly to an employer or an employer's site. But then again, once somebody's working with us or you have somebody that you've already hired or is in the pipeline, that we can go out there and assess the site. So it's nothing we could do proactively. However, if you ever have any questions or just understanding about the process or about, or just talking to a voc rehab staff, I could literally spend an hour or two really getting into the details of the types of services, the type of accommodations, the different things we've done. But you could call a local office, you could call me, you can call anyone with VR, and we'd be happy to just to talk through with some things with you. If you're like, I have a situation or I have a scenario or this is kind of what we have going on. What do you suggest or how have you accommodated that before? So I don't know if that really answered it, but.
I would say one of the most important things that an employer can do if they think that they want to start looking at a different pool of employees with diverse abilities is to throw out whatever concept you have of what a good employee looks like. Okay, and I say that humbly. I can say my gut says whenever KCRC was looking for a new president, they probably didn't have somebody like me in mind. And I'm not the most executive type of guy in the world, okay? That's very real. But it's a part of our culture to throw things out like that, okay? I mean, I would say this. If you really need help, you need to be willing to talk to whoever might want to work for you, period. It's that simple. They're a human being that might want to work for you. At that point, you can begin to try to figure out what might it take. And one of the simplest things that you can do is humbly ask them. Nobody's better at having that specific disability than they are. They walk around with it every day, right? And ask them. We had somebody with visual impairments coming looking for employment just last week, and that's not something that we're super familiar with. And so we just sat her down and said, what is it going to take? What is it that you're going to need, and how can we best support you? And she laid it out for us, and we have willing hearts and are going to walk down that path with her to figure that out. It's as basic as that. And then at that point, again, that's where service professionals, whether it's KCRC, they need to get engaged with VR to be able to tap into those resources that are available to them and whatnot. But that's when the rest of the crew, the professionals in these areas and whatnot, can come in and help support you along with that employee the whole way through. But it just starts with just meet the people. Just meet them. Don't have some this is what an IT person looks like and this is what kind of education they need to have or whatever it is. Don't look for that. Look for somebody who's willing. Somebody with a willing heart, I promise you, 9 times out of 10 will make you a much better employee than somebody who doesn't want to be there but has a pedigree of degrees to be doing the role. Just sit down with the person, have the conversation, and be willing to walk that path with them.
Any other questions before we wrap up for the applicant? Well, thank you to our panel.